My name is Liz Harris. I'm the Events and Marketing Coordinator for Bike Walk KC. My pronouns are she, her, and I am so happy to welcome you to our second quarter stakeholder meeting. This is a new series that we started just during the pandemic, just to touch base and talk to our friends and our members and our partners who are such a big part of this work, since we haven't got to see you in person very often. And honestly, even as we hopefully continue to get back in person in some ways, I think that these are an important way to check in and interact in a more interpersonal way than just emails and social media. So I'm really happy to welcome you all here tonight. Thank you for joining us. If you missed it earlier, I did mention that this session is being recorded, and I'll share a follow-up email tomorrow that will include the YouTube link for anyone who missed it, or anybody who would just like to review the session tonight, as well as other links that we'll share throughout the program tonight. We're going to just drop a whole bunch of links in the chat so that you can do your own research or follow up on items that we mentioned here tonight on your own time. And I think with that, I think we're, let me introduce our staff and our board members who are present tonight. We'll start with that. So tonight we have Eric Rogers, who is our executive director. He's waving there. Amy Scribner is our development director and also my boss. Hi, Amy. Michael Kelly is our policy and advocacy director. And Eric Vaughn is our director of bike share and also director of business services. Did I get that right? Okay, it's business something, business services is correct. And then tonight we also have with us one of our newest board members, Robin Shook. There he is. Hi, Robin.
And a new papa too.
Yeah, yeah, like a crying baby, so I'm keeping muted.
Well, I think you are not the only one. We have a few new parents tonight, so it is totally fine. Family friendly. That's what we're going to do tonight. All right, so I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael. He's going to get us started with our program tonight. I'm going to share my screen, and so that everybody can see. Does that work for everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to turn myself on mute. So Michael, if you are ready, you can take it away, sir.
All righty. Well, thank you, Liz, and thank you everyone for taking some time to sit down and hear what's going on with Bike Walk KC. So again, let's get started with the advocacy and policy updates. Next slide. And thank you, Robin. So first things first, we got our big advocacy win for the year in May with KC-Mo unanimously adopting the Decriminalization Ordinance. We are the largest city in the country to achieve this, and this was done with the help of a huge swath of partners from across the communities you can see here. So the Decriminalization Ordinance, real quick, it eliminates jaywalking from the municipal code, it eliminates bike inspections from the municipal code, and it significantly modifies the dirty wheels section to essentially exempt all cars and trucks under 12,000 pounds. So a huge thank you to everyone who helped to get this done. And we're hoping to kind of use this to push for other policies which will make it safer and more equitable, especially for Black and brown travelers. Next slide. In addition, we're continuing to help push the city to implement its Vision Zero goals. One of the things that have been stated by the city that it wants to get done is build 30 miles of protected bike lanes over the next 2 years, which would be an enormous jump over what has been the case over the last decade. What you're seeing here is an example of one of those being built, the Gillum Cycle Track. And that project is close to complete. I think the only thing they're waiting for are some last minute barriers on the middle section, but it is just about done, which is fantastic to hear. And so in addition to that, there are crosswalk improvements, speed humps, and other improvements that the city is hoping to implement in the initial phase to help it reach its ultimate goal of ending traffic fatalities by the year 2030. Next slide. Oh, got a little bit ambitious. With Complete Streets, what's happening there is we are currently working with at least a couple of local communities on Complete Streets policies. Westwood actually adopted their policy late last year along with Wyandotte. There we go. And we're currently working with Riverside, Missouri to help them adopt a policy as well. These are just the policies here in the metro. We are also working with a number of rural communities, including Clinton and Joplin, and we anticipate that we could have as many as 4 new Complete Streets policies adopted by the end of this year. This is all being done with the help of our Model Complete Streets Ordinance template, which has received a perfect score from the National Complete Streets Coalition. So it's something that all of these communities are using to develop active transportation policies which work for them. Next slide. So to close it all out, how can you help? The big thing is help us find more advocacy champions. Biking and walking is a multifaceted, multiracial, multi-gendered community here in Kansas City, and we need to find more of those champions that represent those various facets of our community. So if you know folks who like biking, who like walking, but don't know about Bike Walk KC and what we're doing to advocate, please connect them with me, because we want to find those partners, we want to find those champions and amplify those voices, because when everyone sees that it's not just the middle-aged guys in spandex who are riding, but people who do it for groceries, for their children, or for a whole host of reasons, that can help to make Kansas City make that shift to being more engaging for active transportation. So with that, thank you again, and I will pass it on to the next person. After I end with this quotation from Eric. Transportation has always been a social justice issue, but people are recognizing that more so than in the past. So again, cycling is something that can be equitable and good for our city if we're willing to invest and if we have the voices to tell us that it can be such. So again, thank you again. And please, if you have advocacy questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Looks like that's me. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Vaughn, the Director of Bike Shared Business Services for Bike Walk KC. This year has been a very exciting year, actually starting even last year during the pandemic. As we all know, bike share has really been on the rise as a mode as people seek to get outdoors and seek both activity outdoors, but as well as alternative transportation modes that are safe and accessible. And we're seeing lots of demand for bike share. We're expanding. If you haven't noticed in the last month and a half, we now have bike share all over unified government area in Rosedale and KU Med. They have a fleet of 30 bikes out right now, electric bikes. So you can find those out right now with the Ride KC bike app, where they're at in real time. They've been really well received, and you can see there on the screen the mayor riding the bike. I think he's probably had the most fun on the bikes of anybody so far. But they've been really well received, and ridership has gone well early. And we're excited to talk about even further expansion there. On the right there, you'll notice Rosedale Development Association there in Rosedale is serving as our newest equity partner as well. Happy to have them on board. They're really in the neighborhood, out there on the streets, helping make sure that people are educated on bike share, how it can really benefit them, but also offering highly subsidized memberships directly to low income individuals and the people in the community there that need it the most. So happy to have Aaron and the whole team on board there. I know they're gonna do a lot of good sharing the bike share word out there in Rosedale. We've also, I mentioned the pandemic when I started, we've provided a lot of free rides. We had a whole program focused on healthcare workers and making sure that they have free transportation. That's been also really heavily utilized. We've seen uh, staff from KU Med, Truman Medical, Children's Mercy, St. Luke's, everybody all over the city is seeing staff take advantage of that program. And they're using it for both transportation to work, but we're also hearing them say that they're discovering biking again for the first time, which is great to see. Next slide. June has been a great month for us. We've had nearly 4,000 trips, which is our busiest month, I'm sorry, of bike share so far. We are looking for nothing but growth in the future as we go forward. We've seen this trend in the past, and we're looking for a continued growth. I think we were about 10% above our previous record, which is really exciting to see. As I mentioned, we have a lot of prospects for moving into more neighborhoods and communities across the region. And so as we continue to expand, we're going to get more of these trips and more, which means more people out enjoying active lifestyles. Next slide. We are hiring. So if you know of anybody looking for a part-time job, we're looking for at least 1 or 2 operations associates to help keep the system moving. This is really the backbone of our staff. We take a lot of pride in our crew, and they're out there 7 days a week, making sure that everybody has a quality, safe ride anytime that they really need one. Next slide. So how can you help? The easiest thing you can really do is download the Ride Casey bike app and go for a bike ride. That's really easy, and it's not a big ask. Go have some fun. We also happen to have money for local communities. We do have funding in place to help pay for bike share startup operations. But we need local municipalities and partners to partner with and really be the driving force to make it happen. So if you know of any local communities that would benefit for this, feel free to reach out, and we'd love to make a connection. Info at Ride Casey Bike is a great place to drop that, but I know Liz will also be sharing some links at the end as well. I think that's everything for me, so I will pass it along.
Thank you, Eric Vaughn. I'm going to fill in for Laura Steele, who is our education director and couldn't be with us this evening. What we're really excited about with our education program is getting back into schools. So Bike Walk KC has one of the largest safe routes to school programs in the country. Before the pandemic, we were on track to serve almost 10,000 kids across the metro area in one school year. And obviously the pandemic closed schools and made a lot of changes, but we're excited to be talking with many schools around the region to get our programming back in. In the meantime, we've been doing a lot of work outside of the school, finding places in the community to provide educational opportunities to kids in places like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and neighborhood associations. We did restart some in-person adult education, and we were very grateful to work with the Johnson County Library System throughout the pandemic to provide some virtual online classes, especially around Maintain Your Ride, to help people take those new bikes that they bought during the pandemic last year and make sure they were in good repair and able to keep going. Something that we also did just recently is do a lot of work to help get more people in our community trained to become certified cycling instructors, so that the folks in the community who are teaching people bike education and bike safety and all of the skills that go along with that reflected the diversity of the people in our community. And I know several of you helped with our fundraising campaign to provide scholarships to diverse individuals to become certified and trained to become league cycling instructors, as we call them, with the League of American Bicyclists. And I think it's especially cool that the 7 folks who recently completed that training program were all females from many parts of the metro area, even from beyond Kansas City. And that's something that we're continuing to do, is to make sure that the people who are doing this work in our neighborhoods reflect the people that live in our neighborhoods. So how you can help is to take a look around you in your community. If you're the parent of a school-age child, reach out to your school and ask, what are they doing to help kids walk and bike to school? Do they have bike racks? Do they have safety programs? Some schools don't even allow kids to walk or bike to school. And so if that's the case, we want to know about that so we can help address those challenges. We provide a range of technical assistance and supports to schools that want to get more kids walking and biking to school. So reach out to your own school. And then if you encounter barriers or challenges, let us know. Let's see, Liz, if it's okay, I did see there were some questions in the pre-event registration about that, especially some questions around family education and family-focused street design.
Yes, we did have a few.
Yeah.
We had some folks ask about family education, family-focused street design, as you mentioned. What do you think?
So those are great questions, and they're really timely. We are really moving a lot of our education programs to not be focused on adults or kids, but be really focused on the family unit. And so we're offering more and more programs like bike education or Earn a Bike programs that really do involve the whole family. Something else that we're working on in terms of street design and what we advocate for is really family-friendly street design. There's a lot of good work around the world that's happened in that area that we're trying to learn from. So for example, in a place like Vienna, Austria, they have a whole program around gender neutral public space design that really makes sure that the physical layout of our cities is accommodating for all genders. There's also a really interesting movement in a lot of places around the queering of public space, which means how do we design our public spaces so that they're safe and comfortable for people within the LGBTQ community. And at the end of the day, that's all about making our cities safe and welcoming for the most vulnerable among us, which means they're better and more accessible and safe for all of us. And so we'll be talking more about that in the coming months in our advocacy and our planning work.
Can I ask, just while we're on that topic, can you give a couple of, I know you and Amy have been talking about this, can you give a couple of examples, thank you, Amy, about what it means to have a gender mainstreaming or a gender neutral city?
So one way would be to think about it in terms of like park space as a public space, and how do you design like the landscaping and the shrubbery and the trees so that it provides a balance of private spaces so people don't feel exposed and open to potential harassment or uncomfortable situations, but at the same time provides enough openness and visibility so that people don't feel isolated or hidden from view if they are in an uncomfortable situation. Does that make sense, Liz?
Yeah, cool. I think that's just something that I haven't heard a lot about here in the States and here in the Midwest. And so I was just curious about what that means.
And I can offer one really simple example. Think about if in Vienna specifically, if a woman is walking alone and there is an alley or someplace that she can't quite see the end, like if there's someone waiting at the end, just installing mirrors so that she can see and make a choice, an informed choice of whether or not she wants to go down that path if there's someone waiting or lurking. So that's another example that I think was just like brilliant and obvious, and every city should do more of that.
Very cool. Are we ready to talk about community planning? Do you think? I think it leads us right into it, really. We'll have similar questions along there, I'm sure.
Yeah, and so this is me again. I'm going to fill in for Thomas Moorfield, our planning director, who also is not able to join us this evening. Our planning program works with a lot of municipalities and other agencies and communities around the region to provide urban planning and technical support to promote walking and biking. Something that we've actually been working a lot on recently is a little bit outside of Kansas City, but is across rural Missouri. We're involved in a partnership called Missourians for Responsible Transportation, and that's a collaboration with our nonprofit partners in St. Louis and Columbia and Springfield, the local advocacy groups around Missouri, to provide planning and policy support for the smaller communities in the state that don't have that expertise in-house. So we've done some work like a trails plan for Bethany, Missouri in the northwest part of the state. We've worked with a lot of communities around the state on things like complete streets policies, et cetera. And so that work is ongoing. We're really thankful to have the support of organizations like the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services that provides these resources to communities around the state. More locally, we're also working with some smaller communities within the Kansas City region. Places like Westwood in Johnson County, Grandview in South Kansas City, and West Penway in the west side of Kansas City, Missouri, working on bike and pedestrian master plans and things like complete streets policies. So it's not just something for the big cities or the urban core, but it's also something that can have a real impact in the smaller communities, whether they're suburban or rural around our region. And so earlier, Michael mentioned the Gillum Road cycle track, and I just wanted to share this little quote we received recently from a resident in the neighborhood, Chris Taft, who is a Bike Walk KC member and had a little testimonial about how great the new cycle track is on Gillum Road and how it's impacted his ability to access services and opportunities in the city and even connect to his family elsewhere in Kansas City. That's really great, and we thank Chris for her testimonial, and we would really love to hear the feedback that others are seeing or hearing from the new facilities that are going in, because it's really that positive feedback that helps us then go back to elected officials and decision makers to ask for more of this. And so that really is, you know, the way that you can help in a lot of this work. We're monitoring the situation in Washington, D.C., and it sure sounds like there's going to be a big infusion of federal funds into local communities as part of COVID relief spending, as part of new infrastructure investments in the region and nationally. And we want to make sure that when money flows into Kansas City from Washington, D.C., that it just doesn't go to repave our existing roads or to build more highways or expand highways, that it really is spent in a way that makes our communities safer and more livable and more connected. So something that I would ask everybody to do, wherever you are in the region, reach out to your own city hall, your mayors, your city councils, and ask, what are they planning to do if they receive an infusion of infrastructure funding from DC? and what's their strategy to spend that in a way that makes our community safer and more livable and more sustainable. And so that's my challenge to all of you to go back and do this evening. Let's see, Liz, I think that was all on this topic. Did I answer the questions?
I am going to follow up with some questions that maybe both you and Michael can help us address that are probably relevant to both of you. We heard a little bit about the Vision Zero updates and about the, cross our fingers, 30 miles of protected bike lanes, hopefully coming to Kansas City, Missouri. We had a question about driver education and share the road activism or marketing. Is that something that either of you can speak to?
I can start on this, and then if Eric has additional points, you can add on this as well. So driver education and share the road activism is something that we're kind of tangentially involved with. So one of the things that Bike Walk KC does is we're involved with a group called Destination Safe, which is housed in the Mid-American Regional Council. And what the purpose of Destination Safe is to essentially find and fund various efforts around the region to create a safer transportation system. And a lot of those efforts are dedicated to education purposes, driver education, some efforts related to biking education, walking education, and they are currently working to update their regional Vision Zero plan. We recently spoke with them as part of a stakeholder group on Wednesday. And one of the things that came up was the issue of driver education. And so there were several ideas that were proposed, including making biking and walking a more integral part of driving tests, and just making it clearer to folks that if you are driving, you really are not only taking your own life into your hands, but the life of every other person who exists outside of that vehicle while you're traveling.
I just want to say, it's Ellen. I just want to say it's really great to hear that. I mean, there's examples of almost not every time we ride, but of drivers who think they have the right of way when they don't, or whatever it might be. So however that plays into, I think would be really well received, at least by me.
I will also add really quickly for Liz and the other folks too, that education is one of the pillars for Vision Zero as a broader kind of philosophy. And so it will not only be a part of the regional efforts, but I imagine that as Kansas City works to implement its own Vision Zero efforts, that there probably will be a component that's specifically related to public education as well.
And I just wanted to quickly go back to the Gilm cycle track, because that's really an example of what we're advocating for as an evidence-based intervention. One of the exciting things in this world right now is that there's a lot of empirical evidence around what does get more people walking and biking. And it's that physically separated facility where people feel more comfortable and more safe. And the data shows they are safer. And it does lead to more people walking and biking. And so we try to do that in cooperation with raising awareness of people that are driving. And that kind of testimonial that Chris offered, we really appreciate her doing that, because I wanted to give you guys a heads up that we're going to be doing a thank you campaign about the Gilm cycle track to, a lot of times in our work, it's confrontational and we're kind of asking elected officials and demanding them to do things and really putting pressure on them. But we don't often take the time to go back and thank them when they do things that are awesome like this. And so we're going to do a thank you campaign to our elected officials in Kansas City and in Midtown especially, to let them know that we appreciate this and hear more stories like Chris's. And so please stay tuned for that. Hopefully next week we'll be able to share a link and do that and let you know more about that.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a couple more questions that might be related to community planning, and they might be related to business services with Vaughn, but they're about bike racks. So we have a question about how do we get bike racks at public places? So not just private businesses, but how do we get them at public places like post offices and the like?
Right. So this, many of the cities around the region do have ordinances in place that say new development will put in bike racks in the future. So the good news is that as we see more progress going forward and new development happening, we will see more bike racks being put out. In the meantime, where that's not occurring and we want bike racks, Bike Walk KC does have a program to help people acquire bike racks. We're the nonprofit dealer for Darrow, and so we can offer extra low cost rates on all bike parking equipment for our local communities, but also provide some insight on navigating some of those permit processes that exist out there with our various cities and other jurisdictions that we have. Often it does require a right-of-way permit if it's in a public space.
All right, thanks. I know
so you can also reach out to us. I'll plug info@Ride KC Bike again if you want help getting some bike racks or just want to see how much they cost. We've done all sorts of interesting projects in the past. But we've worked across the metro, and there's more places to park out there than ever, and we're going to continue to focus on that.
I think one of the things that has helped some local neighborhoods is working with the neighborhood association or the CID to get a little bit of extra muscle and extra money. And so instead of trying to get someone like the post office where you have to go through a lot of government red tape, perhaps you can go through the neighborhood or the business district that can help get bike racks for the neighborhood, which is a little easier sometimes than going through a lot of bureaucratic processes.
Absolutely. And some of the projects we've done like that are, downtown Lee Summit, Martin City, CID, and as well as downtown Overland Park. So those are examples of whole neighborhoods, as well as the Marlboro neighborhood, whole neighborhoods getting involved in the project.
That's a great point, Amy. Sometimes we get a little jargony around here. A CID is a community improvement district. So I know that here in the Midtown area, we have Midtown KC now would be an example of a CID. And I know that there are lots of community improvement districts throughout the area. So if you have one near you, those would definitely be a group to reach out to.
Is there anything ever around wayfinding to get to bike parking? Because I know that even I am guilty of putting my Ride KC bike in the wrong spot, as I can attest by the emails that I occasionally get. So I didn't know if some of those popular places can say hey, there's a bike rack this way or that way or this way, that way. Is there any, have you ever guys seen that happen or?
There's honestly not a lot of that. Most of our cities around the metro don't actually track bike rack locations, unfortunately. But I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, was it the Women Bike KC group recently? Somebody was actually created a database for that.
Yeah, we have somebody who is in the very casual Women Bike KC Facebook group who is creating a crowdsourced Google map with pins wherever you find a bike rack. So I will add that to my list of links. I'll hunt that down and I'll send that out tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, exactly, David. So I think if we are ready, Amy, I think it's our turn.
Liz, I think you get the stage first.
You're going to let me take it away first. All right. So first up, I want to talk about events. So the big thing happening this year is Tour de BIER. This will be, I believe, our 10th year for Tour de BIER. Am I right about that, Rogers? Just making sure that I got that right. 10th year for Tour de BIER. This year, last year kind of threw us for a loop, right in the middle of planning, just with just a couple of months to go. We all fell into a pandemic. This year, we're still taking it easy and playing it safe. We are going to do a 30-day Tour de BIER, and we're calling it Bike Your Own Adventure because you get 30 days to ride around KC, explore our city like you're a tourist in your hometown. We'll have we have 8 breweries that will be joining us for the Tour de BIER this year. We'll send out route maps that you are welcome to follow. We always encourage you to follow the route maps, but we know that that's not always how it works. And especially with 30 days, you could do all 3 routes if you wanted to. Just take 3 weekends and take, your 15 of your best friends, your best bike buddies, and go make your own Tour de BIER. We are honored to be sponsored this year by Port KC. They are our lead sponsor, and we are grateful for their support. We'll have it with Port KC. We're having several big events coming up. We're starting off in July with a couple of walking tours of areas on the levee that have been generally closed to the public. And Port KC staff is going to give us a tour of those areas and give us kind of an inside look at the projects that they have coming up for those parts of the levee that have been closed. Those are really limited in space. It's an outdoor event, and we're walking. However, we want to make sure that everybody on the tour can really hear the tour guide. And so we don't want a giant group where we're all just walking in a group and nobody actually hears what's going on. So we really want this to be, it's going to be a really small group. So make sure you get your reservations in for that. And we'll see you on July 18th and also on the 31st. We are partnering with BAR K and Port KC for a riverfront heritage cleanup on August 15th. That's going to be a great event. BAR K is going to invite us back afterwards for drink specials. They're offering our group some discounts just for us, and to thank us for taking care of the riverfront and to thank us for being, good biking and walking partners. We're happy to do that with them. And then we are planning a little Tour de BIER family picnic for August 29th. We're going to have a lot of fun with it, and it's going to be a really casual picnic. Bring your family. It's family oriented. And we'll be, if you ordered merch or if you want to ask questions about your Tour de BIER packet, which will be all on your phone, all digital. If you have questions about that, you can ask us there at the picnic before we even get started with the Tour de BIER. And then the very beginning of September, I don't know if you know this, but as recent as the 1970s, the riverfront was basically a construction dump. It was a tow yard. It was a contaminated, polluted, muddy mess. And Port KC has really done a magnificent job of turning it into a vibrant, thriving green space full of people who live there, people who work there, people who shop there. And we're going to talk with Port KC CEO John Stevens about how they did that and their plans for continued development along the riverfront. And we'll do that on September 7th. That will be a virtual event. So all of the other events are in person. And then the Let's Talk will be a virtual event. I'm going to add the list of links to the chat here, including the upcoming events link. So you can click that and that will take you to the Bike Walk KC website, which will share with you all of the details for the event. And then Amy, I'm going to say it's your turn now.
With pleasure. And I'm watching time because I want to save time for all the additional questions. I will say Q2 for fundraising has been fantastic. As a development person, it has just been pure joy, Q2, to see the response to some of our fundraising campaigns. And this follows on a record-breaking year in individual giving for 2020 during the pandemic. And so that tells me that there are lots of people out there who get what we're doing, that it's important, that we're making an impact on the community, and folks are willing to invest in the work. And all of you are part of that, and I just want to thank you. Let me first just explain Mile 10, just so the slide makes a bit more sense. Mile 10 is our campaign that celebrates our 10-year anniversary because we're in the midst of celebrating that milestone. And I would encourage everyone to take a look at some of the blog posts that Eric Rogers has done. He is not only our executive director, but also our co-founder. And we made him go back in the time machine and tell us all the greatest hits from each year of our evolution. And he's written a few blog posts documenting that history. And it is pretty incredible to take a look at how far we've come and how much we've done. So in the spirit of celebrating and supporting community, we have decided to launch a series of monthly fundraisers called for our Mile 10 campaign. And we have had such a great response. In April, we did our first one and we focused on helmets and safety kits like lights and locks for kids because we distribute those for free for kids who come through the program. I would have been happy. I was like, $500 would be fabulous. And we had over 100 people respond and give over $3,600 for that initiative. And so thank you. I know some of you were among those supporters. In May and June, as Eric explained about the LCI program, certification program, we want to support a more diverse participants coming through and getting certified. So we recognize that there are some financial barriers because it can cost up to $500 to go through the process. So we are raising money for scholarships. And Port KC, the fantastic partner that they are, said that sounds like something we want to support. They gave a $500 matching challenge grant and said, or gift, and said, offer this up to your supporters and see what you can do. And combined with their gift, we raised over $1,300, which is great. And for July, we're looking at school bike racks and also nonprofit organizations who serve youth. So as we talked about in the beginning of the presentation, bike parking is an issue. And it's just a shame that we provide free bikes, free helmets, free safety kits. We teach kids how to ride and ride safely. And then their number one concern is that they don't want to have their bike stolen. So when they go to school, when they go to their after school programs, when they go to some of their other extracurricular activities, many of them don't have an option to park their bikes safely. So we want to provide a fund that schools and nonprofits in need can come to us and we'll work with them on subsidizing the cost of those bike racks. So yay, thanks, David. So these are funds that we want to continue to fundraise for. And if you're interested, if you haven't given yet, or if you know folks who would be interested, please spread the word. Liz, you want to do next slide? Oh my gosh, new members and donors. First, let me just say that of the 409 members and individual donors who have come on board year to date, 88 of them are brand new, which for us is just fantastic. And I will say those monthly fundraisers, most of those new donors and members came through those efforts. So again, like I could get goosebumps, like people are so generous, they get the need. And we have the privilege of connecting people who care to solve problems in the community, and we're serving as that bridge. And we have 88 new folks to the family, which is fabulous. All right. Yep, how you can help. There are lots of nonprofits out there doing fantastic work. And you all are a generous group and want to help, but you have to make decisions. So what I would ask is that you spread the word to others who you think will resonate with our mission and get them connected. But I would also ask you to consider placing Bike Walk KC as one of your top 3 organizations that you support. We are unique in what we do. There's no other organization in this space currently in the region, in the area. And if you believe in the work that we do, I would just ask that you consider putting us in the top 3 of nonprofits that you support. And just spread the word. Forward our e-newsletter. Forward, share social media posts. Let people know what's going on. Word of mouth is priceless. And you all, we really rely on you all to connect people with us. And if you just want them to connect with Eric or with me or anybody here to answer questions before they invest in the work, happy to do that, because we do a lot and it can be confusing a bit to keep track of all that we're doing. So please feel free to spread the word and connect with us. And thank you. And I think, Eric, is this you?
Yes, thank you, Amy. Yeah, so we had a couple of other general questions that you all submitted with your registration. Several of them were around issues of diversity and racial equity and how that informs our work. And those are really great questions, especially for us as an organization that is made up of mostly white folk, but is often working in communities of color. And so just a few things to answer some of those questions that you all submitted. First of all, it starts with the folks who are involved in the organization. And right at the top is our board of directors, who provides our governance, and everything flows from them. And so we are working hard to make sure that our board of directors is reflective of the diversity of the entire region in the Kansas City metro area. We have a couple of more board seats open for 2021, and we are actively looking for folks who can fill those seats and help bring more diverse perspectives from life and work and community where they come from. It also then flows into the organization as a workplace and the people that we employ. We have a couple of new positions that we're going to be hiring for in the next few weeks and months, and we will be looking for a very diverse pool of applicants to make sure that the people who work here reflect the community that we work in. And then something that we're starting to turn our attention to in the future is what does diversity mean to us as a business? I mean, we are a nonprofit, but that means we are also a business. And so what does that mean for our business practices? What vendors do we select to provide services? Are we supporting small businesses in our own community? Women and minority owned businesses when we're procuring services and supplies and things like that. And then from there, it flows into the work we do in the community and the communities we're working in. And it's like anything, it's an ongoing process. And so for those who ask these questions, thank you. And we are looking for your input and suggestions and constructive criticism. And we really want you to help us work on these issues together. And then Liz, I saw a couple other questions. I'm just going to jump in and answer. Feel free to interject with me. Wanted to give a shout out to the Rock Island corridor opening. So if you haven't heard, Jackson County Parks is opening the next phase of the Rock Island Trail, which will go from the Truman Sports Complex down to the current section that's open just south of Raytown between there and Lee Summit. Saturday morning, I think it's 10 a.m. at the sports complex. They're celebrating the ribbon cutting of the Rock Island Trail. That's a really exciting project because it's one of the very first things that we started advocating for more than 10 years ago, and we're excited to see that come into fruition. So we'll share a link tomorrow in the follow-up email with the information about when and where that's happening, and hope to see many of you there. Let's see, are there any other questions we had, Liz?
Yes, we had one, and this one might be a good one for Michael. James asked about volunteer opportunities, and especially with advocacy and policy. Michael, can you speak to that?
Sure. So in general, there are opportunities in your own community where you can get involved with advocacy opportunities specifically related to biking and walking. Several communities around the region have various iterations of a bicycle pedestrian advisory committee, and oftentimes they have vacancies. So to give you an example, here in Kansas City, we have a bicycle pedestrian advisory committee, but we also have vacancies for folks in the 1st, 2nd, and 5th districts. So if you're a resident of any of those districts and you live in KCMO, we would certainly want to plug you in so you could get involved there. We also do some work with individuals in other communities who want to specifically help to move the needle. So places like North Kansas City and Overland Park, we've identified champions there who are looking for ways to kind of convince their electeds. And so if it's a conversation about a specific community, we're also happy to have those conversations as well. So please, yes. Yes, so Vaughn is is involved with Livable Streets, so the equivalent bike ped advisory committee in Lee Summit. So again, if you're looking for an opportunity, that's really the most basic way to get involved. If it's something more specific, like a policy that you're wanting to see passed, that is something that you can reach out to us, and we're happy to help with as well.
This is a great question, and I feel like this is one that we've asked around the office a few times. Ellen wants to know how connected the RIT is, so the Rock Island Trail is, with the new segment. Can you get from the sports complex all the way to Lee Summit now? And Vaughn says, yes, Greenwood edge to stadiums. So now I want to know, can you get from Brush Creek Trail all the way to the stadiums on trail yet?
Almost. We are really close. So the Brush Creek and the Blue River Trail systems get us really close to Stadium Drive. And then there's a really short segment on Stadium Drive and Leeds Parkway to get to kind of the western side of the stadium's parking lot. And then from there, you can kind of wind your way through the parking lots between the stadiums. And then the Rock Island Trailhead is kind of on the very far southeastern corner of the stadium parking lot complex. From there, it goes all the way to Southern Lee Summit. And then there's a gap of about 5 or 6 miles from there to the Rock Island spur of the Katy Trail, which could then get you all the way to the St. Louis region. So there's just a couple pieces that are left. I was just talking to some folks at Jackson County yesterday, and they say that they're actively working on planning for what's called the Greenwood Gap, which is that gap through Greenwood between Lee Summit and Pleasant Hill. And there's at least one project for part of that that's going to go out to bid for construction in the next few months. And we need to go back and follow up with our friends at the city of KCMO to see what the current plan is on the western end to get us connected from the Brush Creek and the Blue River trails into the Rock Island. So it's really close, but we still have a couple of very important pieces to fill in.
All right, thanks everyone. Okay, so I don't want to cut anybody off because this is a chatty group and we've answered a lot of great questions today. Good conversation. But I do want to also be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to put out a last call for questions, and I will turn off my mic just in case anybody wants to speak up.
Well, I just wanted to say that you all are doing such great work. And this time last year, I got real excited about trying to build a team to do a electric bike demo day, and realized I just don't have the bandwidth to lead that, though I would help with it. So that'll have to happen at another time.
I have an e-bike. I can help with that.
Yeah. It's because my thrust is an electric bike taking the place of your car for 80% of the trips. And I think that's where you could have a huge increase in people using bicycles, because it actually saves money and is so much more doable with an electric bike. So that's still going to happen, but it's going to take somebody leading it. But thanks.
Well, and David, thank you for all of your work with KC Drawdown Society and all of the efforts to make biking a core part of our community's future, to be more sustainable and climate resilient.
We have a question about Gillum. Any thoughts on if Gillum might be getting bike signals in the future?
I believe that's the plan. I'll go back and check with our friends at Kansas City Public Works. I know I was just on Gillum this morning, and I know they're finishing up with the concrete barriers and the vertical delineators this week. I believe finishing up the signals and the traffic signal adjustments are probably one of the last things yet to happen. But I would think very soon, in the next few weeks, and I will follow up and try to get more information about that.
I've only lived in Kansas City off and on-ish for like, I don't know, 7 years or so. But can I just say that it is pretty amazing how I knew Kansas City then and how I know it now. Sometimes this work can seem like we are, pedaling in the highest gear and just trudging along at a snail's pace. But I just want to encourage you all that persistence and perseverance is really the key here. And collectively, as advocates, both professional and also as just people who ride their bikes and people who walk their kids to school, we have made massive change in Kansas City over the last 10 years. So I want to thank you all for that. Our last slide says you are the key that unlocks doors to businesses, school districts, city halls, and neighborhood associations. And that is 100% the truth. You basically put in the Overland Park bike lanes, you put in the Kansas City bike lanes, you are building the Rock Island Trail with every bit of advocacy that you do. So I want to thank you so much for supporting Bike Walk KC in your words and in your deeds, and with your funds and your investments. And I want to thank you all for that. And I want to thank you for coming tonight. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up so you can all go home. Thank you so much for joining us. I will follow up with that email tomorrow. So watch in your inbox for a little Friday list, massive list of links, a litany of links, in fact. I'll send that out tomorrow, and then keep the conversation flowing. Like Amy said, like all of us said, send us an email, give us a phone call, leave us a message. And we are eager to continue the conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming to the second quarter stakeholder meeting, and have a good night.